A lawyer purchased a box of very rare and expensive cigars, then insured them against, among other things, fire. Within a month, having smoked his entire stockpile of these great cigars and without yet having made even his first premium payment on the policy, the lawyer filed a claim against the insurance company. In his claim, the lawyer stated the cigars were lost in a series of small fires. The insurance company refused to pay, citing the obvious reason that the man had consumed the cigars in the normal fashion. The lawyer sued and won. Delivering the ruling, the judge agreed with the insurance company that the claim was frivolous. The judge stated, nevertheless, that the lawyer held a policy from the company which had warranted that the cigars were insurable and also guaranteed that it would insure them against fire, without defining what is considered to be unacceptable fire, and was obligated to pay the claim. Rather than endure a lengthy and costly appeal process, the insurance company accepted the ruling and paid $15,000 to the lawyer for his loss of the cigars lost in the fires. Now for the best part. After the lawyer cashed the check, the insurance company had him arrested on 24 counts of arson. With his own insurance claim and testimony from the previous case being used against him, the lawyer was convicted of intentionally burning his insured property and was sentenced to 24 months in jail and a $24,000 fine. Only in America. "Oh, please excuse me," said the bunny. "I didn't mean to trip over you, but I'm blind and couldn't see you there." "That's perfectly all right," replied the snake. "It was my fault. I didn't mean to trip you, but I'm blind too, and I didn't see you coming. By the way, what kind of animal are you?" "Well, I really don't know," said the bunny. "Since I'm blind, I've never seen myself. Perhaps you could examine me, and then we'll both know." So the snake felt the bunny all over and said, "Well, you're soft and cuddly, you have long silky ears, a fluffy little tail, and a twitchy little nose. You must be a bunny rabbit." The little blind bunny was so pleased with this that he danced with joy. The bunny said, "I can't thank you enough. What kind of animal are you, sir?" The snake said he didn't know for the same reason. The bunny agreed to examine him, and when he finished, the snake asked, "So, what kind of animal am I?" The bunny said, "You're hard, you're cold, you're slimy, and you haven't got any balls. You must be a lawyer." A stingy old lawyer who had been diagnosed with a terminal illness was determined to prove wrong the saying, "You can't take it with you." After much thought and consideration, the man finally figured out how to take at least some of his money with him when he died. He instructed his wife to go to the bank and withdraw enough money to fill 2 pillowcases. He then directed her to take the bags of money to the attic and leave them directly above his bed. His plan? When he passed away, he would reach out and grab the bags on his way to heaven. Several weeks after the funeral, the deceased lawyer's wife, up in the attic cleaning, came upon the 2 pillowcases stuffed with cash. "Oh, that darned old fool," she exclaimed. "I knew he should have had me put the money in the basement." I married Miss Right. I just didn't know her first name was Always. It's not true that married men live longer than single men. It only seems longer. Losing a wife can be hard. In my case, it was almost impossible. A man was complaining to a friend. "I had it all. Money, a beautiful house, a big car, the love of a beautiful woman. Then, pow, it was all gone." "What happened?" asked the friend. "My wife found out." "Wife, let's go out and have some fun tonight." "Husband, okay, but if you get home before I do, leave the hallway light on." How many men does it take to open a beer? None. It should be opened by the time she brings it to the couch. A man rushes into his house and yells to his wife, "Martha, pack up your things. I just won the California lottery." Martha replies, "Shall I pack for warm weather or cold?" The man responds, "I don't care, just so long as you're out of the house by noon." Women will never be equal to men until they can walk down the street bald and still think they are beautiful. I haven't spoken to my wife for 18 months. I don't like to interrupt her.
If your wife and a lawyer were drowning and you had to choose, would you go to lunch or to a movie? A man is incomplete until he is married. After that, he is finished. A lawyer and his Czechoslovakian friend were camping in a backwoods section of Maine. Early one morning, the two went out to pick berries for their morning breakfast. As they went around the berry patch, gathering blueberries and raspberries in tremendous quantities, along came two huge bears, a male and a female. The lawyer, seeing the two bears, immediately dashed for cover. His friend, though, wasn't so lucky, and the male bear reached him and swallowed him whole. The lawyer ran back to his Mercedes, tore into town as fast as he could, and got the local backwoods sheriff. The sheriff grabbed his shotgun and dashed back to the berry patch with the lawyer. Sure enough, the two bears were still there. "He's in that one!" cried the lawyer, pointing to the male, while visions of lawsuits from his friend's family danced in his head. He just had to save his friend. The sheriff looked at the bears and, without batting an eye, leveled his gun, took careful aim, and shot the female. "What did you do that for?" exclaimed the lawyer. "I said he was in the other." "Exactly," replied the sheriff. "Would you believe a lawyer who told you the check was in the mail?" A doctor, a lawyer, a little Boy Scout, and a pastor were out for a Sunday afternoon flight on a small private plane. Suddenly, the plane developed engine trouble. In spite of the best efforts of the pilot, the plane started to go down. Finally, the pilot grabbed a parachute, yelled to the passengers that they had better jump, and bailed out. Unfortunately, there were only 3 parachutes remaining. The doctor grabbed one and said, "I am a doctor. I save lives, so I must live," and jumped out. The lawyer then said, "I'm the smartest man in the world. I deserve to live." He grabbed a parachute and jumped also. The pastor looked at the little Boy Scout and said, "My son, I've lived a long and full life. You are young and have your whole life ahead of you. Take the last parachute and live in peace." The little Boy Scout handed the parachute back to the pastor and said, "Not to worry, preacher. The smartest man in the world just jumped out with my backpack."
3 friends, a rabbi, a Hindu holy man, and a lawyer had car trouble in the countryside and asked to spend the night with the farmer. The farmer said, "There might be a problem. You see, I only have room for 2 to sleep, so one of you must sleep in the barn." "No problem," chimed the rabbi. "My people wandered in the desert for 40 years. I am humble enough to sleep in the barn for an evening in their memory." With that, he departed to the barn, and the others bedded down for the night. Moments later, a knock was heard at the door. The farmer opened the door. There stood the rabbi from the barn. "What's wrong?" asked the farmer. He replied, "I am grateful to you, good sir, but I can't sleep in the barn. There is a pig in the barn, and my faith believes that is an unclean animal." His Hindu friend agreed to swap places with him, but a few minutes later, the same scene reoccurred. There was a knock on the door. "What's wrong now?" the farmer asked. The Hindu holy man replied, "I too am grateful for your helping us out, but there is a cow in the barn, and in my country, cows are considered sacred. I can't sleep on holy ground." Well, that left only the lawyer to make the change. He grumbled and complained, but went out to the barn. Moments later, there was another knock on the farmer's door. Frustrated and tired, the farmer opened the door, and there stood the pig and the cow. So little Johnny's teacher is warned at the beginning of the school year not to ever make a bet with Johnny unless she's absolutely sure she will win it. One day in class, Johnny raises his hand and says, "Teacher, I'll bet you $50 I can guess what color your underwear is." She replies, "Okay, meet me after class and we'll settle it." But before class ends, she goes to the restroom and removes her panties. After class is over and the students clear out, Johnny makes his guess. "Blue." "Nope, you got it wrong," she says as she lifts her skirt to reveal she isn't wearing any underwear. "Well, come with me out to my dad's car. He's waiting for me, and I'll get you the money." She follows him out. When they get to the car, she informs his dad that he got the bet wrong and that she showed Johnny that she wasn't wearing any underwear. His dad exclaims, "That motherfucker! He bet me $100 this morning that he'd see your pussy before the end of the day."
A big city lawyer was called in on a case between a farmer and a large railroad company. The farmer noticed that his prize cow was missing from the field through which the railroad passed. He filed suit against the railroad company for the value of the cow. The case was to be tried before the Justice of the Peace in the back room of the general store. The attorney immediately cornered the farmer and tried to get him to settle out of court. The lawyer did his best selling job, and the farmer finally agreed to take half of what he was claiming to settle the case. After the farmer signed the release and took the check, the young lawyer couldn't help but gloat a little over his success. He said to the farmer, "You know, I hate to tell you this, but I put one over on you in there. I couldn't have won the case. The engineer was asleep and the fireman was in the caboose when the train went through your farm that morning. I didn't have one witness to put on the stand." The old farmer replied, "Well, I'll tell you, young feller, I was a little worried about winning that case myself because that darn cow came home this morning." Two physicians board a flight out of Seattle. One sits in the window seat, the other in the middle seat. Just before takeoff, an attorney sits in the seat by the aisle. The lawyer kicks off his shoes, wiggles his toes, and starts to settle in when the physician in the window seat says, "I think I'll get up and get a Coke." "No problem," says the attorney. "I'm by the aisle. I'll get it for you." While he's gone, one of the physicians picks up the attorney's shoe and spits in it. When he returns with the Coke, the other physician says, "That looks good. I think I'll have one too." Again, the attorney obligingly fetches the drink. While he's gone, the other physician picks up the other shoe and spits in it. The lawyer comes back and they all sit back and enjoy the flight. As the plane is landing, however, the attorney slips his feet into his shoes and realizes immediately what has happened. He asks the physicians, "How long must this go on?" he asks the physicians. "This fighting between our professions, this hatred, this animosity, this spitting in shoes and peeing in Cokes." At the United Way in a fairly small town, a volunteer worker noticed that the most successful lawyer in the whole town hadn't made a contribution. This guy was making about $600,000 a year, so the volunteer thought, why not call him up? He calls up the lawyer. "Sir, according to our research, you haven't made a contribution to the United Way. Would you like to do so?" The lawyer responds, "A contribution? Does your research show that I have an invalid mother who requires expensive surgery once a year just to stay alive?" The worker is feeling a bit embarrassed and says, "Well, no, sir, Does your research show that my sister's husband was killed in a car accident? She has 3 kids and no means of support." The worker is feeling quite embarrassed at this point. "I'm terribly sorry. Does your research show that my brother broke his neck on the job and now requires a full-time nurse to have any kind of normal life?" The worker is completely humiliated at this point. "I am sorry, sir. Please forgive me. The gall of you people. I don't give them anything, so why should I give it to you?"
A trial had been scheduled in a small town, but the court clerk had forgotten to call in a jury panel. Rather than adjourning what he thought was an exceptionally simple pace, the judge ordered his bailiff to go through the courthouse and round up enough people to form a jury. The bailiff returned with a group of lawyers. The prosecutor felt that it would be an interesting experiment to try a case before a jury of lawyers, and the defense counsel had no objection, so a jury was impaneled. And the trial went very quickly. After only an hour of testimony and very short closing arguments, both sides rested. The jury was then instructed by the judge and was sent back to the jury room to deliberate. After nearly 6 hours, the trial court was concerned that the jury had not returned with a verdict. The case had, in fact, turned out to be every bit as simple as he had expected, and it seemed to him that they should have been back in minutes. He sent the bailiff to the jury room to see if they needed anything. The bailiff returned, and the judge asked, "Are they close to reaching a verdict?" The bailiff shook his head and replied, "Your Honor, they're still doing nomination speeches for the position of foreman."
During the French Revolution, hundreds of people were guillotined. One day, 3 men were led up to die. One was a lawyer, one was a doctor, and the third was an engineer. The lawyer was to die first. He was led to the guillotine, the attending priest blessed him, and he knelt with his head on the guillotine. The blade was released, but stopped halfway down its path. The priest, seeing an opportunity, quickly said, "Gentlemen, God has spoken and said this man is to be spared. We cannot kill him." The executioner agreed, and the lawyer was set free. The doctor was next. He was blessed by the priest, then knelt and placed his head down. The blade was released and again stopped halfway down. Again, the priest intervened. "Gentlemen, God has again spoken. We cannot kill this man." The executioner agreed, and the doctor was set free. At last, it was the engineer's turn. He was blessed by the priest and knelt, but before he placed his head on the guillotine, he looked up. Suddenly, he leapt to his feet and cried, "Oh, I see the problem."
A forester and a lawyer were in a car accident and showed up at the pearly gates together. St. Peter greets them at the pearly gates and takes them to the homes where they will spend all of eternity. They get into St. Peter's holy vehicle and head on down a gold road, which turns into a platinum road, which turns onto an even grander road paved with diamonds to a huge mansion where St. Peter turns to the lawyer and says, "Here is your home for the rest of eternity. Enjoy. And if there's anything you need, just let me know." Then St. Peter took the forester to his home, back down the diamond-studded boulevard, down the platinum highway, down the street of gold, down an avenue of silver, along a stone alley, and down an unpaved footpath to a shack. St. Peter says, "Here you go," and goes to leave when the forester says, "Wait a minute, how come the lawyer gets the big mansion and I get this shack?" St. Peter says, "Well, foresters are a dime a dozen here. We have never had a lawyer before." A nurse at a care home was making her rounds when she glanced into one of the rooms. To her shock, she saw an elderly woman kissing on her husband's package. She quickly stepped inside. "Mrs. Phillips, you can't do that." The old lady looked up innocently. "Why not? I've always enjoyed it." The nurse sighed. "Yes, ma'am, but it was meant to be buried with the rest of him." As Mr. Smith was on his deathbed, he attempted to formulate a plan that would allow him to take at least some of his considerable wealth with him. He called for the 3 men he trusted most, his lawyer, his doctor, and his clergyman. He told them, "I'm going to give you each $30,000 in cash before I die. At my funeral, I want you to place the money in my coffin so that I can try to take it with me." All 3 agreed to do this and were given the money. At the funeral, each approached the coffin in turn and placed an envelope inside. While riding in the limousine to the cemetery, the clergyman said, "I have to confess something to you fellows. Brother Smith was a good churchman all his life, and I know he would have wanted me to do this. The church needed a new baptistery very badly, and I took $10,000 of the money he gave me and bought one. I only put $20,000 in the coffin." The physician then said, "Well, since we're confiding in one another, I might as well tell you that I didn't put the full $30,000 in the coffin either. Smith had a disease that could have been diagnosed sooner if I had this very new machine, but the machine cost $20,000 and I couldn't afford it then. I used $20,000 of the money to buy the machine so that I might be able to save another patient. I know that Smith would have wanted me to do that." The lawyer then said, "I'm ashamed of both of you. When I put my envelope into that coffin, it held my personal check for the full $30,000. A very well-dressed and dignified lawyer called a plumber to fix his flooded bathroom. When the plumber arrived, he was carrying an extra set of overalls.
The dapper, impeccably groomed, and expensively dressed lawyer smirked in a condescending way and said, "Do you usually need a change of overalls?" The plumber just smiled. When he was done, the plumber gave him the bill and told him he had to get some more equipment from his truck. He explained that he needed a new assistant because of all the work and was short-handed. When the plumber returned, he entered the lawyer's office, and there in the garbage can were the lawyer's mirror-polished Brooks Brothers cap-toe shoes with the black silk socks rolled up and tucked neatly inside. On the floor was the hand-tailored $2,000 Armani pinstriped business suit the lawyer had been wearing, as well as the natty Hermes silk tie, monogrammed gold cufflinks, starched white shirt, silver tie pin, and Rolex. His law degree and briefcase were also piled up next to them. The plumber went in, and there was the lawyer in overalls lying under the sink with his bare feet sticking out. The lawyer looked out with sweat streaming down his $100 haircut, and he pointed at the bill and said, "You found your assistant."
One day, a man who had been stranded on a desert island for over 10 years sees an unusual speck on the horizon. It's certainly not a ship, he thinks to himself. As the speck gets closer and closer, he begins to rule out the possibilities of a small boat, then even a raft. Suddenly, emerging from the surf, comes a drop-dead gorgeous blonde woman wearing a wetsuit and scuba gear. She approaches the stunned guy and says, "Tell me, how long has it been since you've had a cigarette?" "10 years," replies the stunned man. With that, she reaches over and unzips a waterproof pocket on her left sleeve and pulls out a pack of cigarettes. He takes one, lights it, takes a long drag, and says, "Man, oh man, is that good?" "And how long has it been since you've had a sip of bourbon?" she asks him. Trembling, the castaway replies, 10 years. She reaches over, unzips her right sleeve, pulls out a flask, and hands it to him. He opens the flask, takes a long swig, and says, "Wow, that's absolutely fantastic." At this point, she starts slowly unzipping the long zipper that runs down the front of her wetsuit, looks at the man seductively, and asks, "And how long has it been since you've had some real fun?" With tears in his eyes, the guy falls to his knees and sobs, "Oh, good Lord, don't tell me you've got a laptop." Two blondes decided to rob a bank together. The first blonde, Judy, planned the robbery and went over the plan with the second blonde, Buffy, in great detail. The robbery began. Judy drove up in front of the bank, stopped the car, and said to Buffy, "I want to make absolutely sure you understand the plan. You are supposed to be in and out of the bank in no more than 3 minutes with the cash. Do you understand the plan?" "Perfectly," replied Buffy. Buffy went in the bank while Judy waited in the getaway car. 1 minute passed, 3 minutes passed, 7 minutes passed, and Judy was really stressing out. Finally, the bank doors burst open, and here came Buffy. She had a safe wrapped up in rope and was dragging it to the car. About the time she got the safe in the trunk of the car, the bank doors burst open again, with the security guard coming out. The guard's pants and underwear are down around his ankles while he is firing his weapon. As the gals are getting away, Judy yelled, "You are such a blonde, I thought you understood the plan." Buffy said, I did exactly what you said." "No, you idiot," snapped Judy. "You got it all mixed up. I said, tie up the guard and blow the safe."
George and Lenny decide to cross North America in a hot air balloon. However, neither were particularly experienced balloonists, and Lenny's mind quickly drifted from navigation to thoughts of how clouds look like cuddly little bunny rabbits. Upon realizing that they were lost, George declared, "Lenny, we are going to have to lose some altitude so we can figure out where we are." George let some hot air out of the balloon, which slowly descended below the clouds, but he still couldn't tell where they were. Far below, they could see a man on the ground. George lowered the balloon to ask the man their location. When they were low enough, George called down to the man, "Hey, can you tell us where we are?" The man on the ground yelled back, "You're in a balloon about 100 feet up in the air." George called down to the man, "You must be a lawyer." "Gee, George," Lenny replied, "how can you tell?" George answered, "Because the advice he gave us is 100% accurate and is completely useless." The man called back up to the balloon, "You must be a client." George yelled back, "Why do you say that?" "Well," the man replied, "you don't know where you are or where you are going. You got into your predicament through a lack of planning and could have avoided it by asking for help before you acted. You expect me to provide an instant remedy. The fact is, you are in the exact same position you were in before we met, but now it is somehow my fault." There was an Irishman, a Mexican, and a blonde guy who worked construction together. They were working on top of a building one day, and it was lunchtime. The Irishman opens his lunch pail and he sees he has cabbage and beef. And he says, "If I get one more beef and cabbage for lunch, I'm gonna jump off of this building." Then the Mexican opens his lunch pail and gets a burrito. He says, "If I get one more burrito for lunch, I'm gonna jump off this building." The blonde man opens his lunch pail and gets a bologna sandwich. He says, "If I get one more bologna sandwich, I'm gonna jump off this building." The next day, the Irishman opens his lunch pail and finds cabbage and beef, so he jumps off the building to his death. Then the Mexican opens his lunch pail and finds a burrito, so he jumps off the building to his death. Finally, the blonde man opened his lunch pail and found a bologna sandwich, so he jumps off to his death as well. The next day, at their funeral, the Irishman's wife said, "If I only knew he was sick of cabbage and beef, I would have packed him something else." Then the Mexican's wife said, "If I only knew he didn't like burritos, I would have packed something else." Finally, the blonde man's wife said, "I don't know what his problem was. He packed his own lunch." A gorgeous young redhead goes into the doctor's office complaining about aches and pains in whichever part of her body she happened to touch. The doctor looked at her, completely puzzled, wondering what on earth could be wrong with such a young, vibrant-looking woman. "Impossible!" he cried. "Show me." The redhead took her finger, pushed on her left shoulder and screamed, and then she pushed her elbow, screaming even more. She pushed her knee, screaming yet again, and then she pushed her ankle, doing the same. Appearing pensive for a few moments, the doctor suddenly had a great idea about what might be causing the problem. He asked, "You're not really a redhead, are you?" Seeming surprised at the question, the woman was at a loss as to why the doctor might be asking her this. "Well, no," she replied. "I'm actually a blonde. I got this new dye job because I was fed up of everyone thinking I'm some airhead. But what does that have to do with anything?" "Ah, I thought you might be a blonde," said the doctor while trying not to laugh. "You don't have aches and pains all over your body. The pain you're feeling is because your finger is broken." A brunette who can't stand blondes is walking in the forest when all of a sudden she sees a magic lamp on the ground. Thinking to herself, "It always works in the movies," she proceeds to pick up and rub the lamp. A genie immediately emerges from the spout and says, "I will grant you 3 wishes, but whatever you wish for, all the blondes in the world will receive double the amount you receive. Do you understand?" "Yes, I understand," says the brunette. "And for my first wish, I want you to give me an incredibly handsome man." "Do you understand that all the blondes in the world will receive 2 incredibly handsome men?" asks the genie. The brunette replies yes, and so an incredibly handsome man pops up beside her. "For my second wish," says the pleased brunette, "I want you to give me $1 million. Do you understand that all the blondes in the world will receive $2 million? Said the genie. The brunette replies yes, and a large pile of money pops up on her other side. Growing even more excited, the brunette says calmly, "Lastly, you see that stick over there?
I want you to beat me half to death with it.